بغدادي. هنا. وليد. حسن. حييم. حياة. جنى عثمان. ليان. جنة تامر. علي. مريم. لولو. تدرس. يحيى. and يوسف عوض. ياسمين. سعيد. عليا. Morning, friends. There are 17 students in the room so far. Before I start, I'd like to remind you of your PISinter presentations. Most of you have presented their projects. Yasmin Said, you haven't presented your project yet. Yasmin, can you hear me? Yasmin Said? Yasmin. Okay, I have chat. طيب, you haven't presented your project yet, Yasmin, and you have to present it. This is the last session. So fix the problem with your mic, please. I want to hear your voice. Okay, Yasmin, quickly, please. Yasin, welcome, Yasin. Ganna Tamer, have you presented your project? Ganna Tamer? Yes, I think you did. Ganna Tamer, can you hear me? Yasmin, how can you present it here? I need to hear your voice. Yasmin, I need to hear your voice. Please fix the problem with your mic. Okay, but we can't hear you. Your friends need to hear you. It's a presentation. We need to hear you. To take the full mark, please fix the problem with your mic. Quickly, please. Waiting for you. Guys who haven't or who hasn't presented his or her project yet, this is the last chance. Please, if you haven't presented your project, put your hand up and present it. Before we start. Jannah Tamer, can you hear me? Jannah? Jannah Tamer. Jannah, you entered the room. Jannah Tamer, can you hear me? Where is Jannah Tamer? طيب. Please answer me, please. Abdurrahman Baghdadi, you have presented your project, right? Baghdadi?
Yes, Mr. I did.
Yes. Walid, you have presented your project, right?
Yes, Mr.
Thank you. طيب, Ali presented his project. I remember him. Ali did, I think. Ganna Gouda. Ganna Gouda. Ganna Gouda. Ganna Gouda. طيب. Hassan Gouda. You have presented your project, Hassan, right? Hassan Gouda. طيب. I'll go to Ruhaim. Ruhaim, you have presented your project, right?
Yes, Mr. Yes.
Thank you, Hassan. طيب,
Mm.
Alia, Alia,
أيوة
Ali Walid. You have presented your project, right?
أيوة عملته.
Just making sure. طيب, Layan, Layan.
I presented Mr.
Okay, thank you. Uh, Haya, Haya, have you presented it?
Yes.
Okay, طيب, who hasn't, guys? Who hasn't presented his or her project? This is the last chance. Huh? So you all have presented it. Yasmin Saeed and Yasmin Issa, I think, haven't presented their projects. Noreen hasn't. If you can call Noreen, please. If you can ask Noreen to join us because she never joins us and she hasn't presented her project, just to save her or to help her, uh, I'd be grateful. يبقى Yasmin Saeed, Noreen, Yasmin Issa, I think, haven't presented their projects yet. If you can help them, please do. طيب. Uh, and waiting for you, Yasmin Said. Waiting for you. If you're ready, طيب, Ganna Tamer, try to solve your project, your problem with the mic. And this is Ryan. Okay. طيب. As you know, today we're going to revise literature, and uh, we have a short story entitled uh, this is entitled An Occurrence. An occurrence means an event or an incident at Owl Creek Bridge. This is a bridge in the north of the state of Alabama where a man was to be hanged, and this man has done something wrong. What did he do? He belonged to the Confederacy. You know, in the American Civil War, uh, the North fought the South. The North was called the Union, and the South was called the Confederacy. And most of the battles took place in the South. You know, the North was industrialized, rich, and they got rid of slavery. They gave the black people their rights, but the South was agricultural. They depended on owning or having large plantations and having slaves or black people. They were possessed or owned as slaves, as animals for work on these large plantations. The South was against freeing or giving the slaves or the black people their rights. This was the main reason for the American Civil War between 1861 and 1865. And this is a short story on how the Union or the North punished a man who was trying to uh, harm the railroad, okay, that helped them transport their forces to the south. I have a short video. I uploaded, I think, two short videos summarizing the short story. And I'll play this now. If you haven't watched the one on SMS, please watch carefully. And then we're going to read, let's say, if we have time to read it all, but I don't think we'll have time to read it all. It's about 10 pages. I'll read part of it after watching the video. The video is about 10 minutes. Please watch carefully if you haven't watched it.
hands, throw off the noose and spring into the stream. By diving, I could evade the bullets. And swimming vigorously make it to the bank. Take to the woods to get home. My home, thank God, is yet outside their lines. My parents and my love are still beyond the invaders' farthest advance. I was fighting for my country. No one wanted to be at war, but that's not something you choose. It's thrust upon you. That's the nature of it. But once it's happened, you can't run or hide. You have to embrace it. I wanted to fight. So did all of my friends. But my parents wouldn't let me. I was only 16 and they couldn't send off their firstborn to die. But an opportunity came, and I took it.
Owl Creek Bridge marks the shortest crossing of the Hudson in the entire county. It's small, but even if a handful of Regime soldiers secured the creek, we would be in trouble. A commandant issued an order saying that if any civilian was caught interfering with the bridge, they would be hanged. I saw the order.
How far is it to Owl Creek Bridge?
About 30 miles.
And are there any men on the side of the creek?
Next to nothing. We've withdrawn the regime forces towards Ox Cross. There's one sentinel on this side of the bridge.
And suppose the man were to get the better of a sentinel. What could he accomplish then?
I was there a month ago.
The drought of last summer caused the water line to lower. There's a spot of land under the bridge where a well-placed explosive could destroy the whole thing.
It's risky, and we can't spare anyone.
Expect me at the outpost in a few days' time.
I'll look for the smoke.
Attention company, shoulder arms, ready, and fire!
Okay, guys. Uh, I have some questions here. Who can tell us what he or she understood from this short video? Well, this is the story. I want your answers, please. Who can summarize or tell us what he or she understood from the video? Ryan, did you watch the video? Ryan?
Yes, mister.
Did you watch it?
Yes.
Can you tell us what you understood from it?
Uh, I'm, I'm not sure, but I couldn't watch it properly because it was very slow.
Okay, no problem. Type. Who can, guys? Who can tell us what he or she understood from the video? I'm going to read part of the story, but I want you to tell me what you understood. Tadrus? Tadrus, did you watch it?
Sir.
So, any ideas?
Sir, I can't hear you.
Okay, I ask you about what you understood from the video.
Oh, yeah, it was about war and these things. So?
Yes. Okay. Type. Guys, follow up with me, please, because we didn't do this in our online sessions, but I'll do it with you or do most of it with you. Again, this is a short story entitled An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Owl Creek, you know, creek means a small stream or a small canal, and there is a bridge crossing this canal. This bridge was used by the Union forces to transport their soldiers and their ammunition and such stuff. An occurrence means an incident or an event. What is this occurrence? It's the hanging of this gentleman. The gentleman in the video is just 16, but the gentleman in the story is 35 and he's married with some kids. Type. We should start here. This is page 478, connecting to the essential questions or question. We will skip this part. We'll go to the definitions here, literary analysis, and you have to remember this stuff. Point of view is the perspective or vantage point. You know, the narrator or the storyteller tells us the story from his or her point of view, and this is called, and he knows everything. This is called omniscient. But in stories told from an omniscient point of view, the narrator is an observer of all that happens, like death in the book Thief. For example, the opening scene of this story is related or is told from an omniscient bird's eye. Imagine that there is a bird soaring high in the sky and watching everything and can describe everything accurately. So this is called omniscient or bird's eye perspective. Again, here the narrator knows all the details or knows all that's happening. A man stood on a railroad. This is a quotation from the story, bridge in northern Alabama. So this Owl Creek Bridge is in northern Alabama, and in part one, the narrator is like describing everything from a bird's eye perspective. The second type of narrator is in stories told from a limited third person point of view. Readers' information is limited to what a single character feels, thinks, and observes. A piece of dancing driftwood caught his attention. So we have 2 points of view here, the omniscient and the limited third person, and both of them are used in this short story. You have to define both of them, or you have to study the definition of both of them. The point of view in this story shifts from omniscient to limited third person. Both are used in this short story. As the point of view shifts, changes, so do the emotional tone and sense of time. To emphasize this change, Bierce, the writer, Ambrose Bierce, uses stream of consciousness. What's stream of consciousness? A technique in which thoughts are presented as the mind experiences them. The person who is to be hanged experiences some feelings, some thoughts, and they are presented during their taking place in short bursts without obvious logic. As you read, consider which events spark the thoughts and feelings the main character experiences. So the main characters, as you saw, was to be hanged, and during this time, during these few minutes, he experienced many thoughts, and the writer, let's say, reflected them in the story. I'll go to this vocab here. Etiquette, you know what etiquette is. Appropriate behavior and ceremonies. Deference, deference. Deference means respect, politeness, courtesy, regard, and so on. Dictum, dictum is formal statement. It's taken from dictionary or related to words. It's a formal statement of fact or opinion. Summarily, summarily means speedy or hastily. Apprised means informed or notified. Ineffable, ineffable means to or hard to be believed. Hard to be believed, too overwhelming to be spoken or described or believed. Hard to be described. This is the writer. There is a page about the writer. The writer is Ambrose Bierce. He was born in 1842 and died. But here we have a question mark, which means we're not sure about the year in which he died. He died in 1914, or most of the people think that he died in this year, but nobody is sure. When we have a question mark again, so we're not sure about this year. So he is the author of An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. I have a question here. What's meant by an occurrence here, guys? I explained it a couple of minutes ago. What is meant by the word occurrence here? Who can answer the question? Because I don't want you to sleep or leave me. Yusuf Awad, can you tell me what's meant by occurrence here?
Yes, mister.
What's meant by occurrence? This is the title of the story, right?
Like a site?
You know, something was happening at Owl Creek Bridge. An occurrence. What is this occurrence, or what's meant by occurrence?
Event?
Yes, it's an event, but what is this event? What was happening at this bridge?
The war?
No, a man was being hanged, sorry. A man was to be hanged. Okay, this is what's meant by occurrence. Hanging a man. This occurrence is hanging a man. Right. Ambrose Bierce's writing and worldview were shaped by his career as a Union officer in the Civil War. So the writer himself, Ambrose Bierce, was a Union officer. Again, he belonged to the North. But the main character in his story, belonged to the Confederacy, to the South. The poverty in which he was raised, so the writer Ambrose Bierce was raised in poverty, helped to foster Bierce's unsentimental outlook. The brutality he saw during the war strengthened his cynicism. Bierce explored themes of cruelty and death in his writing, earning himself the nickname Bitter Bierce. Again, he had a sharp pen. He was a writer, and he earned himself the nickname Bitter Bierce. So Ambrose Bierce was nicknamed Bitter, you know the meaning of bitter, Bierce. Then Bierce was born in Ohio. You may be asked about where he was born. Be careful. He was born in the state of Ohio and raised on a farm in Indiana. You know, they are adjacent states. Ohio is next to Indiana in the north. Having educated himself by reading his father's books, he left the farm while in his teens to attend a military academy in Kentucky, the state of Kentucky next to Pennsylvania. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, he enlisted, in the Union Army. Pierce fought in several important battles, rose from private to lieutenant. A private is a soldier, to lieutenant, and won many awards for bravery. Toward the end of the war, he was seriously wounded, but he returned to battle a few months later. Poison pen, as I mentioned earlier, he had a sharp pen. This is why he was nicknamed Bitter Pierce. After the war, after the Civil War ended in 1861-65, Pierce settled in San Francisco, California, in the very north, as a journalist. His Prattler, remember this, his Prattler column. He wrote a column in the Argonaut. Okay, this may be the names of some of the newspapers or magazines in which he wrote. The Argonaut from this year to this year, the Wasp, another magazine, and the San Francisco Sunday Examiner. Mixed political, his writings or his column called the Prattler, mixed political and social satire. You know, satire when you criticize the society or the community. Literary reviews and gossip. The broodingly handsome writer was dubbed the wickedest man in San Francisco. Again, he was described as the wickedest man in San Francisco for his cynical and often malicious commentary. He had, again, a sharp pen, a poison pen. Yet Pierce's dark reputation only added to his personal popularity. He was a magnetic figure who charmed those around him despite the malice of his words. Again, he was as sly as a fox in his writings. He made satirical comments on the people around him. This is why he was nicknamed, again, Bitter Pierce. Establishing his legacy, although Pierce published many of his finest short stories in his column, he decided in the early 1890s to publish his collected short stories in 2 volumes entitled Tales of Soldiers and Civilians in 1891 and Can Such Things Be in 1893. The concise or the short, carefully plotted stories in these collections. So he wrote short stories, mainly short stories, guys. Set for the most part during the Civil War, most of his short stories describe the occurrences or the events or the incidents of the Civil War, capture the cruelty and futility of war and the indifference of death. The Perfect Cynic, writer George Sterling wrote of Pierce, his longtime friend, that he never troubled to conceal his justifiable contempt of humanity. Pierce was a perfectionist. A perfectionist is someone who wants everything to be accurate and perfect, a quality that in his case led to an intolerance involving merciless cruelty. A perfectionist person likes to see everything perfect. This is why he or she keeps criticizing everything around him, because he or she is rarely satisfied with what's happening around him. While he was successful professionally, Pierce found little happiness in a world where so few people met his expectations. Again, a perfectionist is not satisfied with whatever is there around him. His marriage ended in divorce, and both of his sons died at an early age. In 1913, at age 71, he traveled to Mexico, a country in the midst at that time. Mexico was in the middle of a bloody civil war. To his or to this day, his fate is unknown. Nobody knows when exactly he died, although a reasonable speculation. Some people speculate that he was killed during the siege of Ojinaga in 1914. Most of the people say that or think that or speculate that he died in Mexico in the Civil War in something called the siege of Ojinaga in 1914. And this is the story itself, an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge written by Ambrose Bierce. We studied something about him, and it's about 10 pages, as I told you. This is the bridge, and this is the creek below the bridge. The bridge we saw in the short movie. It's a railroad bridge, as you can see, a railroad bridge, which was used by the North to transfer or transfer the forces. And we still have, I think, 4 minutes. We can read part one quickly. This is background. The senseless violence, death, and destruction Ambrose Bierce witnessed during the American Civil War convinced him that war was terrible and futile. If something is futile, guys, it's useless. He thinks that war is useless. A large number of people are killed for nothing. He set much of his best fiction, including this story, against the backdrop of his divisive war because the country was divided into two parts, the rich North and the poor South, or the agricultural South and the industrial North, in which the agricultural South, whose economy was based on slavery, their economy in the South was based on slavery, trading in slavery or in slaves, buying and selling them, and they earned most of their money via this or through this. Battled the more industrialized North. So the South battled or fought the North. Fought mostly in the South. But most of the battles took place in the South. The war caused hundreds of thousands of casualties, dead people on both sides. Part one, the short story is about 10 pages. As I told you, it's divided into three parts. Part one is just about 2 pages. Part two is short, also about a page and a half, but part three is the longest. This is the description of the scene. A man stood upon a railroad bridge in northern Alabama, looking down into the swift water 20 feet below. So this was the man to be hanged. The man's hands were behind his back, as you saw in the movie, the wrists bound with a cord. A rope closely encircled his neck. It was attached to a stout cross timber above his head, and the slack fell to the level of his knees. Some loose boards laid upon the sleepers. The sleepers are the pieces of wood on which the railroads are built. Supporting the metals of the railroad supplied a footing for him and his executioners. Two private soldiers. A private soldier is a soldier of the Federal Army, the Union, directed by a sergeant. So there was a sergeant who in civil life may have been a deputy sheriff. A short remove upon the same temporary platform was an officer in the uniform of his rank armed. So this is describing the scene where the man was hanged at Owl Creek Bridge. I told you before many times to read this short story very well, and you still have the time. And I'll end the session now. In the second session, I'll have some questions and answers about this story for those who have read it. Any question before I end this session, guys? I'll end the session and see you in 5 minutes.